Episode 16 is not about dates. It's about patterns. Who shows up where they're not invited, who lingers too long in rooms that aren't theirs anymore, and who keeps saying they've moved on, while their body betrays them every single time. Because if you really clock it, this episode wasn't loud. It was leaky, so damn leaky. Emotions leaking through actions, and this people thought were subtle. Hi guys, it's your girl Funnel Pop. I tell it exactly how I see it, no sugarcoating. If you're here for honest analysis, open conversation, and bold predictions on dating shows, you're in the right place. Like, share, and subscribe. Remember, all information in this video is my analysis, for entertainment purposes only and should not be regarded as facts. Now let me ask you something. Did you notice Minkyong sitting in Hyunji's room again and again? And did you notice how, almost like clockwork, her ex just happens to appear whenever she's there? That's not a coincidence. That's territorial confusion, lol. And then Yushik shows up, with utensils for his ex, like seriously. Utensils. After a date with Jiian. And you want me to believe he's emotionally detached from Minkyong? Please. Don't insult my intelligence. This is where some of you lose me. You see calm and you think indifferent. But I see calm and I think professional masker. Whatever they had didn't evaporate, it just got buried under restraint. Yushik isn't cold. He's careful. And careful men don't erase feelings, they quarantine them. He is not emotionally unavailable. He's emotionally contained. There's a difference. His actions have been clear, and they've been pointing at Hyunji. But clarity in affection is not the same as certainty in choice. If you think this ends where it's currently pointing, you've misread him completely. And yes, I'll say it again later in this video, there's a very real chance Yushik walks out of this show alone. Not because he lacks feelings, but because he chose the wrong timing to finally feel brave. I will explain what I mean by that in detail shortly. Now, before we go any further, a quick message to the PDs of Transit Love. Please and please, next season, give us an overnight stay for exes. No bedroom cameras. Or, give them an opportunity to choose to turn off the camera in their overnight room, but let them keep the audio on. Then give us another overnight stay the very next day with their current love interest. This time, night vision, audio, the whole thing inclusive. It'll be nice to see how they connect off camera. Because the tension between Baekhyeon and Hianji is criminal at this point. This is not casual ex energy. This is unfinished business that never got closure energy. The kind of love that rewires you and never fully lets go. I understand both of them, and honestly, watching them feels like emotional waterboarding. At one point, because the current between them was so hot, I couldn't help but scream, "Get a goddamn room. This is too much torture for them both, ha 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 ha." I'm even sweating now just thinking about it, lol. Now, before watching episode 16, a lot of popular predictions kept popping up on my feed everywhere, and they were all the same. People believe this is how the final couples will be. Yushik x Hyunji. Jian x Woo-jin. Wongu x Jiian. Baekhyeon x Yunyong. And when I saw how confident everyone was, I thought, okay, if it was this simple, why did the production team feel the need to add 2 more episodes? Besides that, many people said this episode was very boring, that nothing happened, and I almost skipped it. But I couldn't disagree more. This episode made me smile the most and gave me the most butterflies. The one date that didn't give me anything was Woo-jin and Minkyong's. But their conversation was so wholesome. Ironically, they have been the only couple that gave me flutters this season so far, until this date. So let's start this video with Woo-jin. One word that kept echoing in my head every time he appears now is servant boyfriend. I know the MCs call him Mr. Ramen or Layman lol, and yes, it's funny. But humor aside, there's a real problem here. Attraction does not grow from submission. You don't entice someone by erasing yourself. He even wrote Jiyeon the handwritten letter he promised, his first time doing so, which was sweet, earnest, and vulnerable. She said it didn't feel romantic the way he gave it to her, and I agree. But I think it kind of misaligned with what Jiyeon actually responds to. She didn't look moved by it. Here's the part people don't want to say out loud. Woo Jin isn't fighting for Jiyeon. He's trying to earn permission to be chosen. And that dynamic is already lost. Minkyong clocked reality faster than anyone. She admitted she wasn't ready to let Yushik go. Woo Jin also admitted he wanted to focus on his ex to avoid regrets. They both decided to support each other as friends. It's nice that they ended things cleanly, honestly, with no theatrics. Woo Jin was able to use Minkyong as emotional leverage to provoke Jiyeon into conforming to him, but even that is still not effective enough. But I genuinely wish him all the best in getting his ex back. And that brings me to the best date of the episode. Wongu and Jian. Yes, they were awkward at first. Of course they were. Both of them are being emotionally pulled by their exes, that even texting each other now is painfully mismatched. They've now missed each other twice. That's some serious emotional misalignment that can potentially impact their dynamics. Night 1 in Japan, Wongu texts Jiyeon, but she texts Woo Jin. They went on their date. Night 2, Jiyeon texts Wongu, and he texts Jihyun. They keep reaching for each other one beat too late. But during their date, things were a little weird in the beginning as they drove to their dating spot, but when they had their walk through that forest, it was so cool, setting the mood for romance. And when making those plates for each other. That moment when Jiyeon was helping him out with his plate, gosh, I melted. I was smiling like a Dracula. Do you know what the Joker looks like in the Batman movie? Yeah, that was what I looked like watching these two on their date, ha ha ha. Okay, but jokes aside, seriously. I melted. I couldn't stop smiling. It was one of those smiles you don't even realize you're wearing until your face hurts. That date was just too sweet. Jiyeon helping him, adjusting, sharing space naturally. That's the version of her that relaxes into someone, not performs for them. And Wongu, he looked lighter and less guarded. Here's my honest read. Jiyeon will only choose Woo Jin if Wongu emotionally exits and officially recommits to Jihyun. Woo Jin is her safety net. Wongu is her risk. And yes, I'm going to say the uncomfortable part. Sometimes it feels like Jiyeon always knew she could pull Woo Jin back into orbit, not because he was interested in her, but because he was vulnerable to being provoked. Even in their preliminary meeting, Woo Jin showed no real interest. That, to me, was his truest emotional baseline. So instead of chasing him directly, she shifted focus. She zeroed in on Wongu, applied pressure there, and let jealousy do the heavy lifting. And it worked. And whether Woo Jin moved because he still wanted her, or because he didn't want to lose her, the result was the same. He became reactive. Now, he's responsive, available, bending. But when you have to contort yourself this much just to be chosen, that choice will never feel secure. Fear becomes the fuel, and fear always makes people give more than they should. And honestly, that's why I respect Minkyong's game. Before now, her game has been messy, emotional, and ineffective. But right now, she's doing something different. She's pulled back. She's not chasing, not spiraling, not forcing outcomes. She is on maximum restraint. And in this house, even temporary restraint can shift the balance. Next is what I call the by-force couple, Beck Hyun and Yunyong. And I'll be honest, this was the first time I actually felt Beck Hyun trying to be present with her. His sincerity came through more clearly than it ever has before. He planned, he paid attention, he even softened. And he presented her with a denim clock, which made her so happy. On paper, this is exactly the kind of date I've been waiting for from him. But here's the uncomfortable truth: sincerity alone doesn't create chemistry. The date was sweet, yes, gentle and considerate. But the spark is still missing. What we're watching isn't attraction blooming, it's Baekhyeon practicing how to move on, without even him knowing it. His head says move on from your ex, but his heart says otherwise. And Yunyong, whether she realizes it or not, is the training wheels. Her flirting stays stuck in surface-level signals. Matching denim and calling him oppa, smiling a little longer than necessary. It's not seductive, it's just safe. And safe is exactly why Baekhyeon can sit there comfortably without his chest tightening the way it does around Hyunji. Yunyong isn't doing anything wrong, she's just doing what someone does when they don't realize they're dating a man who is emotionally unavailable in a very specific direction. She's warm, earnest, and open. But she's also naive in the way people are when they believe effort equals intention. And Baekhyeon, he's kind to her because she makes it easy to be kind. Not because she makes it impossible to look away. What makes this pairing feel, by force, isn't the production or the edit. It's that Baekhyeon's emotional gravity still bends toward one person, no matter how gently he tries to stand elsewhere. You can see it in the way his energy spikes around Hyunji and settles around Yunyong. One makes him restless. The other makes him calm. Calm is nice. But calm doesn't rewrite 5 years of unfinished love. So while I appreciate the sincerity, and while this date was objectively pleasant, I don't believe Yunyong is his endgame. She's his pause button. His emotional recovery room. And unless something drastic shifts, this relationship exists not because it's chosen, but because it's available. And that's the danger for Yunyong. She's dating a man who is being gentle with her while still bleeding internally for someone else. Next is Yushik and Jiian's date. It was, without exaggeration, the flattest date of episode 16. Not awkward in a tense way. Not bad in a dramatic way. Just empty. And emptiness usually means the decision was already made before the date even started. I've said this before, and this episode confirmed it for me. Yushik did have early curiosity about Jiian. That interest was real. But it died the moment two things became clear to him. One, I think he figured out she was Wongu's ex. And Wongu isn't just another guy in the house. He's his roommate. His emotional safe zone. The guy who checks on him when he spirals. Yushik clearly doesn't want to cross lines when it involves his brother who he emotionally respects. 2. Unlike Baekhyeon, Wongu never gave Yushik permission to roam freely around his past. And that's the key difference people keep missing. Yushik pursued Hyunji because Baekhyeon practically waved a green flag in his face early on. He said he didn't care. He said reconciliation wasn't happening. He claimed that he threw away his ex's introduction letter. He even told Yushik that his ex would probably like him. Whether Baekhyeon meant that or was just fronting, Yushik heard it. And I believe Yushik's moves were based on perceived clearance. I also believe he deduced she was Baekhyeon's ex from the first day Hyunji arrived, because of that unnecessary sneaky behavior she showed whenever Baekhyeon came around them. So, that's why Jiian was never going to win here. Honestly, I'm glad she chose Yushik for this date. Not because it went well, but because it finally gave her clarity. She spent a short moment floating when she found out he'd been in her group chat room ages ago. She realized he had noticed her back then. You could see the spark of what if light up in her face. But Yushik shut that door gently and efficiently. He didn't linger. He didn't romanticize. He didn't stretch the moment. He cut the date short, took her back to the lodge, and returned her back safely to his dedicated friend who happens to be her ex, Wongu. That was Yushik quietly saying, "This isn't my story to continue." And now let's talk about Wongu, because this is where the real subtext lives. When Jihyun chose Minkyong as Wongu's ex-designated date, his reaction said everything. He was surprised, but he also looked relieved. There was a flash of satisfaction, almost pride. Because to him, that choice didn't read as sabotage, it read as interest from his ex. People keep framing Jihyun as someone trying to interfere with Wongu's connection with Jian. I don't see it that way at all. What I see is a woman who hasn't emotionally detached, who feels threatened by Jian, and who still wants confirmation that she matters to her ex. That fiery argument they had the night before ended unresolved for a reason. She told him there would be no reconciliation, so in his mind, the door was shut. Until now. She never says it outright, she just circles it with jealousy and frustration. She intellectualizes and redirects, but her jealousy gives her away every single time. Wongu didn't ask why she chose Minkyong because he was angry about missing a date with Jian. If that were the case, his tone would have been sharp, defensive and closed. Instead, it was probing, almost hopeful. He was grinning, my guy looked happy, because in his mind, there was only one reason she would block his date, one reason she would step in. Maybe she still wants me, he thought. So when he asked, why did you get in the way of the person I'm interested in? That wasn't an accusation. That was an opening, a door left ajar. He was waiting for her to walk through it, all she had to say was one sentence, I still have feelings for you. But she didn't. Instead, she talked around it. She said she didn't want him going on another date with Jian. So Wongu pressed gently, still smiling, still hopeful. You've never texted me. You've never told me you want to reunite. So why stop me now? When you wanted a date, I chose the person you wanted. That wasn't him complaining. That was him asking, am I still the man you choose? And because he thought the answer might be yes, he laid himself bare, and affirmed to her, I still have feelings for you. He said this with no armor. No pride. But what did he get back from my girl? Not a yes, not a no. But deflection. She said she could block his date even if she didn't want to get back together. She said she didn't need to text him to interfere. She hid behind logic. She even said, wouldn't it be weird if I told you I like you now, after the fight we had last night? And he answered honestly, I still sent you a text even though we fought. When she dismissed it, saying his message was just to feel her out and complain about her date choice, not because he truly had feelings, he corrected her. He told her that wasn't true. He sent it because he had feelings. And then he added something crucial. What other reason would make him text her when it meant hurting Jian, the woman he had just gone on a date with that same day? That part mattered. And notice, even here, Wongu was still calm, still hopeful. Then came the crack that ended everything. He asked why she texted Yushik that night. And she admitted she thought Yushik had feelings for her. So she reached out to him, but he didn't respond. Now, she's decided to stop there. However, there's a twist. She tries to explain herself during the conversation, even apologizing to him for losing her manners in her method of pursuing Yushik, stating that she cared about him, that is Wongu. But not denying her interest in Yushik, even claiming at some point that she was confused. She was saying the right things in the wrong way, and that is not just the language Wongu needed. What Jihyun was really saying at that moment was this, I care about you, I just don't know how to say it cleanly after everything that exploded between us last night. She even clarified that choosing Minkyong for his date wasn't a last-minute reaction to Yushik. She had already made that decision before she knew where she stood with him. In her mind, that was her way of showing interest, controlled, indirect, emotionally cautious. So while she was explaining intent, he was hearing avoidance. While she thought she was being reasonable, he felt she was being selective with her honesty. But here's the problem, Wongu wasn't asking for strategy. He was asking for reassurance. At this point, all my guy could hear is how much she cared about Yushik, but because Yushik rejected her, she's sort of interested in him and blocking his chances with Jian. That's when Wongu's smile faded. Because in that moment, he understood something painful and unmistakable. Her interest in him wasn't about choosing him. It was about not being rejected by someone else first. Meaning she didn't have the desire for him. He was the fallback guy. That realization doesn't start a fight, it actually shuts one down. So he drank from his bottle of water, stood up, and he left her room. Wongu didn't leave that conversation feeling closer. He left it feeling exposed, and reduced. From what we've seen of Wongu, he leans in when he feels genuinely chosen. But when he senses condition, when affection feels contingent, he pulls inward. He showed his cards, and what he received wasn't clarity. It was condition. And once someone realizes they're being kept as an option instead of a choice, something closes, quietly. Sometimes permanently. I genuinely think Jiian made a mistake here. Not because she doesn't want him back, she clearly does. But because she held back at the exact moment he was finally honest. She wants him to change, but instead of saying that directly, she kept circling the truth. And now my fear is this, she may have unintentionally pushed him closer to Jian. So if Wongu's feelings for Jian deepen from here, it won't be random, it won't be forced, it'll be reactive. And honestly, this might be the moment that ends Jiian and Wongu for good, which makes the popular line in the official trailer, "Did you kiss her?" hit a whole lot harder. That morning, the conversation between Seyong and Hyunji is quietly one of the most important scenes of episode 16, even though it didn't explode emotionally the way Baekhyeon's did. Seyong finally gets what he's been chasing since day one, a real one-on-one with Hyunji, uninterrupted. And what does he do with it? He confesses. He says he wants her back. He even says he's willing to change. But here's the problem. Hyunji isn't hearing his words, she's hearing his history. She reminds him, very calmly but very firmly, that during their relationship he didn't respect her emotional boundaries. That she worked hard to adapt, to soften things, to meet him halfway, while he repeatedly dismissed her pain as saying it was in his nature to snap and that this is just how I am. The key line here isn't about snapping. It's about finality. At some point, he framed his flaws as non-negotiable, almost like saying, "This is the man you get, take it or leave it." And now, after the breakup, after watching her slip further away, he's suddenly talking about change. That irony is not lost on her. And then comes the real emotional damage. During their preliminary meeting, Seyong told her he felt relieved after the breakup. Even if that relief was brief, even if he later clarified it, the damage was already done. For Hyunji, that sentence rewired everything. It told her that while she was still emotionally entangled, he had already exhaled. That single admission drained whatever motivation she had left to fight for him, even though she came onto the show initially open to reconciliation. This is important. Hyunji didn't come in closed off to Seyong. She closed him off because of what he said. She also told him that she met Baekhyeon after meeting him, and that even though she had no romantic feelings towards Baekhyeon before that meeting, a lot changed for her after meeting him that day. She's explaining a timeline. She's saying, the door didn't slam shut immediately. It closed slowly. And Baekhyeon happened to walk past it while it was still open. And yet, Seyong being Seyong, he doesn't retreat. He makes her breakfast, cracking jokes with her, even making fun of how her mouth was shaped. That guy drives me crazy with his humor. I just love him, ha 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 ha. Anyways, even though she stroked his hair during breakfast, I don't think he stands a chance of getting back with her, but he isn't going down without a fight. And that's why what he does next matters. The episode 17 preview shows something we haven't really seen before on this show, a calculated alliance play. Seyong goes to Minkyong and essentially floats the idea of mutual disruption. Shake Yushik, shake Hyunji, create anxiety, create movement, and Minkyong doesn't reject the idea. She considers it. Now, it seems this alliance will really shake things up, because the mystery couple we saw playfully stressing each other on the hotel room balcony can now be positively identified as Yushik and Minkyong. Yushik because of the pants, Minkyong because of the blanket. That clip alone suggests a few walls have already come down between them. The real question is whether Minkyong will truly give Yushik another chance. She may not outflirt Hyunji, but what she does have is history, emotional familiarity, and timing. And timing matters. If Yushik gets his head straight while Hyunji is momentarily distracted by Seyong in episode 17, this could quietly reset their dynamic. Or, this could be the moment Yushik fully affirms his feelings for Hyunji and then does what he does best, slowly transforms his unresolved connection with Minkyong into an emotional safe zone. Not a choice but a refuge, with full best friend energy, and not endgame energy. Now, this is where Seyong crosses from romantic persistence into strategic interference. In the same preview, he needles Hyunji with questions like, if you date Yushik, when would you get married? That's not curiosity. That's pressure. He's testing the strength of her current line, not because he believes she'll choose him, but because destabilizing her is the only leverage he has left. Some viewers might hear that question and think, that's fair, Yushik is younger, and marriage timing matters. And trust me, that's not wrong. The issue isn't the question itself. The issue is who asked it, when, and why. When someone you're emotionally secure with asks a hard question, it feels like concern. But when an ex asks that same question after they've already lost emotional ground with you, it doesn't feel like care anymore. It feels like pressure, and it feels strategic. That's why Hyunji didn't stop and reflect out loud. She clocked it immediately and said, "You're coming at me like this?" That reaction tells us she felt evaluated, not supported. And once someone feels like they're being tested, even a valid point can push them away instead of pulling them closer. So yes, that question may make her think more deeply about Yushik later, especially with the age gap. But in that moment, it doesn't rebuild Seyong's position. It actually costs him emotional goodwill, because it confirms to her that he's trying to destabilize her current love line, rather than reconnect with her emotionally. Plus, let's be real. Does he really think she hasn't already thought about that? He doesn't even know they went to a ring-making shop together. He doesn't know they put those rings on their left ring fingers. When that information lands, it's going to hit him hard. He's fighting, yes. But he's fighting a war that already ended emotionally. And that's exactly why episode 16 and what's coming next in EP 17 are so compelling. Nobody here is evil or stupid. They're just reacting too late because of the nature of the show. Loving too loudly, or strategizing when vulnerability was what was needed all along. That said, because I never say never with this shows, I'm open to seeing if he can magically change the game, by flipping Hyunji's heart to face his direction. But right now, this move pushes her onto guard, not closer to him. Give exchange for their flowers, guys. They didn't just cast well, they casted people who are emotionally intelligent enough to hurt each other in very quiet and very precise ways. Now, moving on to the cutest date of the day. Honestly, these two don't give me butterflies, but they make me smile like crazy. Hyunji has this charm, you know, the way she curls up when she's cozying up to someone. Such qualities actually make her attractive. Frankly speaking, I fell in love with her more in this episode. She projects a shy image that makes men fall for her. Maybe it makes her seem almost innocent, subtle yet magnetic. That kind of charm isn't just cute, it's dangerous. But I'll tell you this, don't let a shy girl's image fool you. They're usually the baddest in bed, and don't ask me how I know because I'm also shy, hahaha. This might explain why her exes can't let go, even though they've both complained that her house is dirty, hahaha. You want me but you don't like my dirty house, huh? If you want Hyunji, you better be ready to clean. The funny thing is that when Baekhyeon and Seyong were having this conversation, Baekhyeon didn't have to say she was dirty directly and Seyong clocked it immediately and spelled it out, hahaha. I just love how real this show is. I'm glad the editors didn't take that part out, because we have to see her flaws as well, even though she's wanted by 4 different men on the show. The meta here is hilarious. Baekhyeon asking Sunjeong how they met was so fun to watch. And another insane fact, they've both met her dad, meaning they both considered marrying her. But now, they're on this show together, entangled by love, and just imagine, her exes are becoming buddies, and Yushik, her current love interest, is also Baekhyun's soulmate on the show. This is literally insane, and yet somehow, it's adorable chaos. Anyway, during Yushik and Hyunji's date, they made couple rings and placed them on their ring fingers. Aw, isn't that romantic? But how come I don't feel butterflies when I watch them? Even making the rings with Yushik did not affirm her feelings, she was dripping with jealousy. Hyunji kept probing about Yushik's earlier date with Jiian, and while he gave polite, minimal answers, she could tell something was unspoken. She still wanted to know who he would choose. Then Yushik tells her that if he had to choose between curiosity and who makes his heart flutter, he'll choose the flutter. He said this without naming any names, making her feel a bit uneasy. And later, when they told them to send their messages that night, Yushik sent his to Hyunji with a simple but impactful line. "It's you. Bro, my heart fluttered multiple times. Who would have thought that for the first time in the history of this duo, my first flutter for them would be because of a text? But here's my reality check, Yushik's heart might flutter, but I don't see him ending up with Hyunji. This isn't because there's no chemistry, it's because he's already wired to protect his emotional self. He flirts with risk, but ultimately, he's calculated. My prediction: he'll go home alone unless he finally confronts his feelings for Minkyong before it's too late. And if Minkyong still wants him, it's game on, but only if he acts decisively." Speaking of Minkyong, this girl is a strategic mastermind in subtlety. Have you noticed how she keeps showing up in Hyunji's room? It's not care for Hyunji, it's a power move. She wants to disrupt the dynamic, ensuring that whenever Yushik enters, he's on edge, split between loyalty and attraction. It's her little way of sabotaging their relationship. She wants to make sure she is there whenever Yushik enters so that he can be uncomfortable and go back to wherever he is coming from. I don't believe she is doing this out of love for Hyunji. I feel like she is saying, "You made me this way, taking my ex's attention from me, so I will focus my attention on you both." She is straight up putting a dent on their relationship without using words. Did you see how she questioned Yushik when he came to the door with the contact lenses case? She was like, "How come you have this?" laughing my ass off. Minkyong behaves like his wife, lol. And do you see how quickly he cowered after she asked him that question? He quickly explained himself that he just borrowed it on the plane and wanted to return it. Then Minkyong gave it to Hyunji and gave a deep depressing sigh. That contact lens case moment was epic. Pure theater. Hyunji had to reassure her from the bathroom that she's not ignoring Minkyong's feelings, with Minkyong responding that she understands, like, how chaotic can this get? And here's the deeper read, Minkyong's behavior tells us she's already thinking ahead. She's deliberately nudging the dynamics to her favor without even saying a word. It's manipulation, yes, but done with finesse. A lot of change can happen in her favor, depending on how she plays the game from now on. So what does all this tell us? Yushik has feelings for Hyunji, but he's also being tested by both women's strategies. Minkyong is not passive. Hyunji is not oblivious. But if I'm being real, Yushik saying, "It's you," to Hyunji. Yeah, it's a total heart melter, I won't deny that. But don't get it twisted, Yushik cares, yes, but he's not the kind of man who falls head over heels this fast. He said this himself as early as episode 2 or 3. He's smart, he's calculating. He watches the entire board before he moves a single piece. So while this looks like love right now, my prediction is this: unless Hyunji becomes his only clear emotional option, the Yushik who ends this show choosing her might not exist. The moment her love line gets blurry or complicated, he's the type to pull back, not push forward. He prioritizes control, timing, and self-preservation above everything else from my observation. So get ready, those butterflies you felt. Enjoy them. Because the final outcome might sting just a little. Alright, let's talk about the climax of episode 16, and brace yourselves, because this is the part that had me clutching my chest. Yushik and Baekhyeon are both walking the tightrope of Hyunji's heart, and earlier that night, they were trying to figure out where exactly her feelings were landing. Baekhyeon tells Yushik straight up, "I'm confused, she told me she still liked me in Seoul," and Yushik is equally puzzled. And here's the thing, why is Yushik confused? Didn't she just tell him he was her priority? This is exactly why transit love is such a psychological chess game. Everyone's motivations are layered, and timing is everything. Anyways, these two walked up to her room to have a chat, and guess who they met there? You guessed it, Minkyong, ha 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 ha. At this point, Minkyong is the fish bone stuck in both Yushik and Hyunji's throats, uncomfortable to swallow, impossible to spit out. Classic Minkyong energy. Then we shift to Baekhyeon and Hyunji on the terrace. Just the two of them. Yushik and Minkyong step away, giving them space, and wow, these two talk under the moonlight until dawn. The tension is electric. One minute they're arguing, the next minute they're looking at each other like they want to tear each other's clothes off. Baekhyeon starts questioning Hyunji, point by point, about her confusing actions. And here's where the difference shows. Hyunji explains everything step by step, in chronological order. No skipping. No dodging. And after hearing her out, Baekhyeon's misunderstanding's finally clear. This is the difference between Baekhyeon and someone like Yushik. Baekhyeon dives into emotional chaos instead of skimming the surface or avoiding it. He realizes the confusion wasn't malicious. He concludes that the situation they were in itself created this confusion. But they didn't stop talking until morning. Then comes the emotional bomb. Hyunji says Baekhyeon was taken away from her by Yunyong, but Baekhyeon immediately corrects her saying, "No, you let me go." Meaning this was her choice, not Yunyong's. She could have held on to him, plus, she still could if she wanted to. This wasn't about anyone else. Before this conversation, Hyunji had already read Baekhyeon's introduction letter and Songyong's letter because she promised Yushik she would. And she was honest enough to tell Baekhyeon that she planned to read his letter with Yushik too, because Yushik was curious. But when she read Baekhyeon's letter alone, she got emotional. It brought back some memories. Then she opened her farewell box and started crying, and I'm like, wow, what's the big stuff in that thing making you cry, baboo? It happened to be Baekhyeon's crutches. Baekhyeon is crazy for real. This man sent a whole ass crutches, for goodness sake. We all know the story, right? She was there when he was discharged from the military due to his injury. She lived with his family and took care of him after surgery. She stayed, so of course she cried. Back to now. They're both inside her room. Baekhyeon picks up his letter and reads it. Hyunji says, "You never wrote it there that I was the person you loved most in the world." And he calmly quotes something different from the letter, claiming that was what was implied there, but it was still cute. Like, OMG. Hyunji is a seductress. She is dangerous. If I was in Baekhyeon's shoes at that moment, I'll be going gaga. In short, I'd be finished. Absolutely finished. Laughing my damn ass off. Then Baekhyeon starts crying and says that in their next life, Hyunji should be born as Baekhyeon and Baekhyeon as Hyunji, so they can meet again. And I'm sitting there like, why are we talking about the next life? You only get one lifetime. Use it wisely. Hyunji is just there, staring at him like she wants him right there and then. Guys, I'm not gonna lie, I was sweating, I was screaming, I was hot. I was singing, get him baby, get your man ha ha ha, OMG, I'm losing it. And if you're still watching this video at this point, please comment, I'm still here, because you deserve a personal thank you. So when Baekhyun started crying, what does Hyunji do? She rubs his leg, strokes it, caresses him, looking at him with bedroom eyes. Like, these two enjoy touching each other so much. No wonder she didn't complain when he kept rubbing her in episode 15. Guys, this scene, they wanted to kiss so badly, I think they went back to their early 20s and fell in love again. I felt it, folks. Then boom. Jian walks in. Baekhyun immediately flips back into his tough guy image, pretending nothing happened, rushing out to the terrace to wipe his tears. But here's the key, I think his public composure is his armor. Like I said in another video, Baekhyun puts on a tough guy persona in front of others, but he is a softie on the inside, and there's a special softness he has for Hyunji that makes me melt. That's why they're so magnetic. You can see she can't resist it too, and when he was finally leaving her room, you know that teenage love where you're on the phone saying goodbye for 30 minutes and it's time to hang up? And you keep saying bye-bye, you go first, and the other person says, no, you go first. Yeah, that's what this was. He keeps turning back, he kept looking back saying bye, and she too curled up her body like a Twinkie Winkie in love with her putty push, looking at him so lovingly, lingering, saying goodbye over and over. I nearly screamed my throat off, it was just too sweet to watch. But speaking of Jian, where did she sleep? Those two may not have stopped talking, if she hadn't returned to that room, lol. And can we talk about the irony for a second? All that trauma, emotion, and affection happened while he was wearing the denim shirt he made with Yunyong. Their matching shirt. A whole emotional reckoning, wrapped in someone else's memory. That irony is just too loud. In front of the production team, Baekhyun breaks down in tears, over emotions he himself can't fully understand after joining Transit Love 4. The point is that he is fully aware that he is still in love with Hyunji, he wants her back, but he is scared of getting hurt again because they hurt each other too much during their relationship. He even said he wishes for her to find happiness with someone else. But is that really the end? Is he finally letting her go in his heart? Their most recent argument on the terrace showed how much they've grown. He asked her not to interrupt him a couple of times during their talks and she listened. That may seem small, but for them, it's huge. That's not closure. That's evolution. When he cried, I cried. These weren't performative tears. They were raw, involuntary, and heavy with history. Love like this is rare. If you've never experienced it, I'm genuinely sorry, because you don't know what you're missing. Many fans have now concluded, saying this means Baekhyun has sorted out his feelings with her and wished her well and will now choose Yunyong. But, will he really choose Yunyong in the end? Now, my take, Baekhyun's trajectory here is pure, follow your heart, but cautiously. He's aware of the past, he's measured, and he's showing Hyunji he's grown. Baekhyun is raw, unfiltered, and that kind of emotional transparency might just secure Hyunji's heart for the endgame. My prediction is Baekhyun and Hyunji will reconcile. They end up together, and yes, I see a passionate reunion kiss lol. Yushik, on the other hand, is a wild card. If he doesn't make a bold, authentic move, I can see him going home alone. The signs are all there. The vulnerability. The history. The depth. Baekhyun and Hyunji were untouchable in this episode. And that's why Transit Love 4 keeps breaking my heart and making me fall in love with love all over again. But buckle up. Because what's coming next? Chaos. Heartbreak. Explosions. Baekhyun has finally laid his heart bare, but he's still holding back. Yushik is going to escalate his quiet war. Minkyong is not exiting quietly. She's going to force a reckoning. By the end of this, no one is leaving emotionally unscathed. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I can't wait to see how my opinions evolve in episode 17. Thanks for watching, please hit the like button and subscribe for more.